Hey, today on the 167, we're wrapping up the Move series and we're talking commitments. Welcome to the 167. Hey, welcome to the 167. I'm here with Pastor Rick George.
Hey, good to be here.
And Pastor Jacob Reeves.
Hey.
Do I say that every time?
Jacob.
It's good to be here.
Sometimes.
It feels like that's my go-to, but let us know if I say it's good to be here every time or not.
You
So
can
that's a
pick
good-
Pastor Rick's next catchphrase.
Yes, I like that. What?
I'm more curious. Did you call me Jacob?
Jacob.
I did.
Brother Jacob.
Oh man,
Brother Jacob.
man,
Yes.
I'm gonna be like I'm in trouble now,
No,
church.
no.
If people are like, "All right, Jacob's coming on stage now."
It's better than when I call you Jacoby.
Jacoby.
Well, if I'm Jacob, that means I'm shaving my mustache and I'm going full Mennonite with
Yes.
All right.
No Shave November in the Mennonite style. Most people are growing their mustaches during November. Jake's just going to grow it.
I refuse.
I haven't shaved since last November. Can you tell?
Oh yeah.
I haven't shaved since last night. No. So this concluded week 5
Yes.
of Move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wow. It kind of, in some ways, it seemed like it just blew through. Like it just seemed like we started and now it's over. In other ways, it seems like, wow, we've been in this series for a really long time.
Yeah.
I know it seems an eternity from when we did the big one. But
Wow.
Yeah.
it also doesn't seem like that long a time that
Yeah.
we've been talking about this.
So anyway, it's been a great 5 weeks.
Yeah. So we did Commitment Sunday this week. We want to thank you guys so much for being here and doing your commitment, filling out that card, and wanting to be a part of this movement. And so this is the final week. So if you're in your life groups, you'll be wrapping up. You'll be having those discussions. And then we're looking forward to First Fruits on
November 21st.
November 21st is First Fruits, which is the time where you bring that first offering. If you are going to give for the first time, if you are upping your offering, maybe if you were giving from those stored resources, that's going to be the time where you give that the first time. So
Yeah, and we're gonna plan some fun things to do on that day just to make it more of a celebration and a joint effort. So you're gonna want to be there. It's gonna be a fun day.
go-kart racing, petting
Oh
zoo,
yeah, it's
Free
gonna-
bananas
yeah.
for everyone.
Pony rides.
bananas,
I know.
We're taking the fruit thing really seriously.
First Fruits, apple bobbing. That'd be great. All right, so this week we were talking about Stephen, and this is one of my favorite stories in the Bible because always there's a heading in my Bible that says Stephen gets stoned, which I always thought that was hilarious.
Middle school boys everywhere are like,
You're so funny.
But the poor guy dies.
Yeah.
So yes, we're talking about Stephen, who was one of the first deacons in the Bible. He was a real trailblazer. This guy, did a lot of firsts.
Yeah. So the thing that stands out about Stephen is like he's just a normal guy. Like he's not one of the, first followers of Jesus. He's not, part of the inner circle of, Jesus' closest buddies. He's not the Apostle Paul, who like gets all the glory. It seems like all the recognition. He does everything. Who can ever
Writes half the New Testament.
Yeah, I mean, who could ever compare to Paul? And he's not one of these first disciples that just walked with Jesus. He's literally just like us. He's just a guy who is compelled to follow Jesus. And in that desire to then just follow Jesus, learn about him, he develops this heart of compassion and serving, and he's just available. He's like, yes, I want to, whatever I can do, I want to do that. And it's recognized by those in leadership. Mm-hmm. And so when that time comes where there's a conflict, let's talk about conflict for a minute, So, yeah.
Excellent.
Have you ever had conflict?
yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's one of the questions that we have for this week is, what would you actually fight for?
Yeah.
Like, what are you willing to get it? Like, and so it may not be a bar fight. It might not be like breaking the beer bottle and, but like, what would you protest? What would you get up in somebody's face about? Like, what would you actually put up a fight about?
Yeah. So let me come back to that. But
Okay.
Stephen is the guy who says, wow, I'm willing to get in the middle of this. Mm-hmm. People recognize that, right? And then they're like, oh, we need people to serve. I know the guy right out of the gate. First guy, Stephen. He's the one. Then there are 6 other guys that come to mind, but Stephen is listed first. And as you keep reading in the book of Acts, like he is so passionate about these things and what he's willing to fight for, he gets up and preaches this incredible sermon. The sermon that he preaches is compelling, it is powerful, and it is long.
Yeah, it is.
And
Like, it is the longest sermon that's recorded in the New Testament. So for all you lay people out, the normal non-professionals, and you think, man, these sermons are really long, if you preached, it would be twice as long, right?
Yeah.
So give us a break.
well-
Stephen had the opportunity, and he went on forever and ever.
But look how that turned out for him, though. He went long, and then
And
That
then
is
the rock
true.
started to fly.
then they killed him. Yeah.
Dwayne,
So
The Rock Johnson?
yeah, so he was
Come
willing.
on.
Yeah, he was willing to fight for some things, and so he stepped out of this, the bleachers, off the sideline, got into the game, onto the battlefield, into the army, and then, yeah, God used him powerfully through his words, through his actions, through his serving, and yeah, it was just an incredible story. So, what are you willing to fight for? That was your question,
Yeah.
right?
When I think about it, like, I don't know if there's a lot of things that I would, because you get that that typical Christian vibe where it's like, oh, I shouldn't be fighting anybody, I should just be rolling over, I should be a martyr, I should be this, and I'm going, when I really sat down to think about it, I'm going, I don't know, if somebody came to take kids from my home, like I'd probably be going to jail. Like
Yeah.
they'd be hauling me out of the house. Like, I'd be like, you're not taking my kids. I don't
Yeah.
care what's going on. Like, I think that would probably be where I would end up drawing the line a lot of
So
things.
you're
for my
saying
kids.
it's about family?
It's about family.
Fast
that-
and Furious.
Is that
Pastor
a
Rick
Is that a
just made a Fast and Fury reference and it
What?
was on point.
It was?
Yeah.
That's
It
a move.
was.
Oh yeah. Look at that.
Vin Diesel agrees. Vin Diesel's going to fight for his family, up into including a nuclear submarine.
Yeah. So, wow. Thinking about that question, the first thing that came into my mind, like, yes, I have things that I'm willing to fight for, but the first thing that popped into my mind is everything that I'm willing to fight for right? Which is
Oh.
like, could I be fighting for things that I shouldn't be fighting for?
Ouch.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, but beyond that, like in my heart, what I want to say is I'm willing to fight for the truth. Okay. And then I can dig deeper in that God's word is the truth. I'm willing to fight for that. I'm willing to fight for the name of God, for the reputation of God, for the word of God, for the presence of God. I'm willing to fight for God in general. And so, yeah, family, yeah.
Well-
maybe, yeah, I'm willing to fight for them. It just, yeah, it gets complicated when you start thinking about, well, what could I fight? What would I fight for? There are some things that I would fight to a point, and then, like, I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing, like when you say that, where you're like, I'd fight for the truth. And it's like you have Stephen in this passage who basically, he's not fist fighting, he's not throwing punches, but he goes as far in the sermon to say, Jesus, whom you crucified. Like he's kind of giving it to the full business.
Oh, even beyond that, some of his verbiage, you stiff-necked people.
Yeah.
It's like he's calling them out.
When he runs through the whole history of Israel to
Yeah, so he's creating a
them.
fight.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, you want to lie about me, you want to call me out, if you want to go there, all right, let's go there.
Yeah.
You stiff-necked people, you're trying to twist things and you're trying to do it like, okay, let's do this. And ultimately, they kill him.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because they
But-
couldn't argue with him.
Yeah. And so you think, well, he stood up for God and it's going to come out victorious. Well, sometimes you stand up for God and
doesn't-
there's a price to pay for that.
Yeah.
And I wish it was a different story, a different narrative, something that we could look at and say, oh, every time you stand up for the truth and fight for the truth, you're going to come out on top. Every time you're going to win.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you will, but it may not look like you're winning in the physical. There might be some consequences.
we're 2 centuries now later talking about what Stephen
Yeah.
did and the sermon he preached, and he died.
Yeah,
like
right, and it's
because
pretty,
of it.
it's a pretty big win. So
Yeah.
ultimately,
If he doesn't
But-
die, did they write down that sermon?
yeah,
Or they just be
Oh,
like, yeah,
yeah.
he'll preach again someday.
yeah.
yeah.
What do you
So-
think, Pastor Jake? What would you fight for?
Man, So I say this. So I became a pastor because of this, not because I'm a pastor. I say this. If you're tracking with me, I would fight for the unity and the function of the church, as being the saving grace going out into the world, and I would fight for the clear and present teachings of Jesus.
I thought you were going to end that with clear and present
Danger. I know. This is something that's definitely shifted. I will say a lot in my own study and life. Maybe in the last 5 to 6 years. In my 20s, I was probably much more like I had actual passions out in the world that I'm like, oh, like I'll fight people on this. I still go through my Facebook memories when they come up, and I'll see stuff I posted like almost a decade,
cringy.
and I'll delete it because I'm like, oh, Jake, you're the worst.
Yeah.
And now I realize that while I have all these things, I care about this. I vote. I do all these things that I can to exercise this. But the thing that I'm going to fight for, not as a cop-out because I'm a pastor, but because I genuinely believe in it, is the things of truth, Scripture, and us needing to find a way to be the church.
The hard thing is knowing not just what to fight for, it's also learning what to fight against. So there's certain things that you have to stand up and say, I'm fighting against this.
Yes.
There are things that you say, I'm going to fight for this. And then what makes it difficult is then to separate, I'm fighting against this thing, not against that person. But sometimes it is a person, and it gets muddy. It gets really complicated.
Yeah, and we've lost a lot of that as a culture. As you and I can disagree about this thing, but I still love you. And that's a hard road to walk.
Yeah.
Well, oh no, it left.
Yep.
Well, I think you also touched on an interesting thing is about how we fight, because a lot of times, like I said, I read that in the Bible where people get all up in arms and they say, "Well, we got to take stands on." I'm going, I don't know. Paul told the Christians, "Hey, I inquired of Jesus, and he says if you can withstand the 14 days of torture and go to the lions and be crucified or martyred, that hey, your reward is I'll meet you in the second death, and you'll be fine." And I'm going, oh, what a great reward that is. Like when the lions gnawing your leg off, you're like, praise Jesus. Yeah. But I mean, Stephen got to see the heavens opened up, which I thought was really cool before he died.
Yeah. So, it's a challenge when you start thinking about the things that you're willing to fight for. It really does start to expose your value system, your belief system. It's your support system. It starts to expose a lot of those things and what you're willing to sacrifice, which is something that I talked about in the message, that willingness to sacrifice. It does start to expose some of the things that, man, I am willing to sacrifice for this.
Yeah. Well, let's talk origin story before we get to the sacrifice, because you made a point this week of talking about the way that Stephen got started. Because Stephen gets started way back in Acts chapter 6, where it says that, the apostles are going around and they're trying to make sure that widows and orphans are fed and taken care of. And he says, hey, listen, it's not our job to run a food pantry. We're here to teach the gospel and kind of move on. And so we're going to need a couple of really trusted guys. They talk about guys who are full of the Spirit, have good faith, guys who are trustworthy, and people that are in good standing in the community. And so they gather 7 of these guys, and the first one out of the gate is Stephen. Yeah. So like, what's the correlation for not just Stephen, but for people in general? How do they move from, being just, hey, I'm one of the people in the church, to now I'm dying for my, I'm making the ultimate sacrifice? What do you think the importance of that is? With the first thing that happened to him was he really just got involved in a ministry.
Yeah. I think each one of us, our story and the story of many, many people in our church is simply a story of, hey, I just found a place to give some time. Yep. I just found a place, like there was a need here, and I started serving. I look back on my own life, and I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, maybe, that, we just started going to a church, and there was a need. Like they didn't have enough door greeters. And so we'd been going there for a little while, and we're like, oh, we can do that. Well, we did it regularly, faithfully, consistently. We did it passionately. And within, I'm thinking, looking back 20 plus years, I think it was maybe after 6 or 8 weeks, like it was really fast. The people who led that ministry, he was being transferred to another state, and they came to us and said, hey, you guys are doing great. We're going to recommend that you take this position. Like, that's going to be our suggestion. And we're like, what? We're pretty new. And that's what they did. We were approached, would you consider doing this? And here we are, 25 years later, and I'm in full-time ministry. I'm pastoring a church. And that wasn't the plan way back there. It was just, well, here's a need. I'm going to give it everything I have. And the end result of that is God put people in our path that said, hey, we recognize this gift in you, and we're going to elevate you to this new level. And then we recognize that gift, and we didn't fight for it. We just stepped into it.
That's a really important story for our listeners to hear, is because I think a lot of people think, like I had a much more traditional, injection into ministry. I grew up a pastor's son. Yeah. I went to 4 years of Bible college right out of high school. I then started working in full-time ministry. Like that's a much more what people I think of when they go, oh, I could never be in ministry because I didn't right out of the gate of high school go to 4 years of Bible college and get a degree. And it's just like, no, like your story where it's like, no, you could start as a greeter. And then like you and I have even advised people in this where they're like, I should go to Bible college. And we're like, no, don't go to Bible college.
Yeah, I didn't graduate Bible college till I was 40 years old.
Yeah. And it's like,
that's what it's like.
And I even struggle with that when people are like, should I go to Bible college? I'm like, I don't know, get an internship at a church that you want to be like, and we've advised people that where we said, you don't have to go to Bible college. You can start serving locally. You can start, apprenticing. You can start, just asking more and more and better questions. And I think it's really foundational for people to volunteer in a ministry and then, like you said, kind of rise up the ranks.
Years and years ago, in the church that gave me the opportunity to step into full-time ministry, that church where I became a greeter, Trudy and I were greeters. We took on that ministry of, getting people in positions there on Sunday morning. It's the FIT team. It wasn't called that, but that's what we did. So going back to that church and thinking about the opportunity that I was given, that was an incredible blessing for me. And them just seeing something in me, something in Trudy and I, a passion, was powerful. And so we just did what we could do in front of us. It was up to the leadership to notice their faithfulness, my faithfulness, somebody else. That's the role of leaders, is to identify. So but back then, way back, I remember a guy came to our church and he said something fairly simple, but so profound, it transformed my life to the point where I still remember what he said that many years ago. And he said this: my availability gives God the opportunity to do a miracle through me. So it's not my ability that matters, it's my availability that matters. And when I'm available, then it gives God the opportunity to do something in my life. And so just be available. You don't have to be the best, you don't have to be super skilled, but when you're available, God can do something and use you in incredible ways.
Yeah.
So
where have you seen that kind of play out in your ministry? Or like, what does that look like when you see somebody and you notice them being faithful, and then you're like, oh yeah, I think that you're capable of more? Like, what does that kind of conversation look like?
I mean, I don't want to pretend that it's every single situation is like this, but the whole time we've been talking about this, I can think that the people that I tend to see, that next step, that I tend to see like, are the people who are willing to serve in the role that they've been called into, available, and with a great attitude and everything. I've always tended to have bad luck with people who are constantly asking for the next step, who are constantly like, I would like more power, not I would like to serve you more, but like I would like more of a stake at the table. And it's not that you can't have a desire to lead people. I mean, that's always been part of me, but there's something about when somebody will show up week in and week out, which I imagine you and Trudy did when you were, as you started. I imagine you were there to greet people.
Yes, every week.
The people that do that week in and week out, and then when there's that extra spark that you're like, oh, there's something here where other people would be willing to listen to you, or you have a gifting further beyond what you're even using. That's where it gets really exciting, because the number of times, unfortunately, I've had way more failures than I've ever had successes of people who are like, I want to move forward, and then we tell them like, all right, well then here's the stuff you're going to serve here. They're like, I don't really want to do that. It sucks because you're like, no, this is right in front of you. There's a clear path.
So kind of tying it in with this past weekend's message. So when you make that commitment and you say, okay, I want to serve here and I'm going to be committed, that commitment to say, I want to be involved here is going to ultimately lead you to a place where you're going to have to make a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And that's where people start dropping off.
True.
Where now I have to sacrifice something. And I'll serve as long as I don't have to sacrifice. But the moment I have to start sacrificing, meaning, wow, I signed up to do something, but I have this incredible opportunity to do something else. Nope, I made a commitment to serve. I'm going to be there. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. That's when people start having a hard time. And so when you make a commitment, it's going to lead you to a sacrifice. And when you make those sacrifices, that's what you're going to be willing to fight for. The people who don't make the sacrifices aren't going to fight as hard as the people who did make a sacrifice.
Because they're not bought in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing when, it's that thing, if somebody comes in and they see something and they knock it down, you're like, oh, this probably wasn't a big deal. But if you're the one that stacked it, it's like, that's a very big deal.
That's a very big deal.
If you're the one that has to stack it again.
Absolutely.
So we're going to wrap up just with this question. It's kind of asking, this week in life groups and stuff, it's going to be asking people about their commitment. It's going to be asking people, well, what roles do they kind of play in our family and where can they see themselves expanding into? What are some dream things that you guys have? So it's like, oh yeah, if this perfect person dropped out of the sky, I would love to raise up a leader into this. So like we've been talking about it for a while. Like I've been talking with our FIT director, our first impressions director, Meredith. We really want to get a parking lot team together because we see the need for it at like the big one. We see the need for it at big services like Easter and Christmas, but also just at our 10 a.m. service, making sure that people are safe, getting people out smooth. There's in the wintertime, it's going to be icy. So like there are kind of dream things that we're moving into. Another area was that, which we're actually starting, is hosting, where we're having people kind of just own the chair section that they're sitting in and kind of know who's there, who's missing, being able to identify those people. So it's like, we can kind of, if you're missing, we want to know about it. Like we want to make sure that you're okay. And so we're moving into some of those areas in discipleship in 2022. I'd love to see us, I'm going to try and free up some of my time so I can actually teach hey, what's the fundamentals of Christianity kind of class for some new believers and get ready, because I want to encourage our people to say, hey, if you invite your friend here that's new, I'm going to provide something for you that we can get them, in that front door of discipleship. So what are some areas that you're kind of like, man, if I had the leader, just the perfect leader that dropped out of the sky, I'd love to dream and move into this area.
Do you want to anchor this or kick it off, Rick?
I better anchor it.
Okay, you have no idea.
That.
All right,
yeah,
okay.
So
I can. In my world, I think the biggest thing that I'm dreaming for, and we kind of we have little pieces kind of forming, are really more worship leaders, and especially and not there's nothing like good or bad as people age, but young worship leaders, because something is a connection point to even younger people when they see the person that next life stage engaging in something. So that 20-something worship leader that's passionate, that's energetic, that loves, especially as we've seen the culture of worship grow in our church, we're seeing that need deepen in youth and transit especially. I know Next has their gatherings as well. And so seeing that expand would be huge. As our production side increases, even underneath Ryan Ellis, our technical director, getting a production manager, somebody who is managing stuff that's coming off and on backstage. Who's there's a lot of moving parts that a lot of times we just hit the weekend and we're like, we hope all these things come together, because
We're just crossing our fingers and hoping for the best.
Ryan is one person, and while he is a godsend after when I came here and it was me managing both, there's still a lot of stuff the way we do service at a high quality and many different things. But anyway, those are kind of the things that I'm like, man, I see that on the horizon, and we're heading towards it. There's people starting to kind of shake out, but yeah.
What do you think? What are you dreaming about?
You know,
A different discipleship pastor? And a
no, I
different
pretty
worship
much
pastor?
have a dream team.
Oh.
So, you know, so we do have a great staff. You know, we're incredibly blessed with passionate, gifted leaders. But the area that we are lacking in, so if I had to add somebody to our already incredible team, it would be someone with a passion and a heart for outreach, evangelism, mission, somebody to take what is in our heart out into the city to do very strategic connections and evangelism to get that stream coming in of people who are in desperate need of Jesus. So, you know, the people, I think we have people that would be willing to serve them and to take care of them. It's that pastor, that passionate visionary to go out and to
Coordinates the whole mission and effort.
That's a lot of many moving parts and multiple.
It's a pretty intense endeavor, and so that would be probably the next member of the dream team.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think that's an exciting vision, because I think that magnifies our heart, because we've talked about this before, that this is exactly what Move is about. Move is not about a building. It's about how do we create space for that next group of people that are going to come in from the community that are far from God, that we bring in, that we can teach them about Jesus and get them discipled and create more followers.
Yeah, and the thing that provides us the opportunities to do all of these things are the commitments of the people who are already here.
Yeah.
The people who God has called here, using their tools, their resources, their bodies, and then when we all come together collectively, the financial resources are there. Yes, to build a building, but yes, to bring on new staff members, to create this intern culture where we're able to bring in people and equip them for ministry either here or in other churches. It's, you know, those financial and physical resources are made available to us because of the commitments of other people. A building is available to us because of the commitments that people make and the passions that they have and the sacrifices, and so it all ties together.
Yeah, and it's
so
it all links together, because you have somebody that says, "Oh, I want to head up this new ministry, and what I want to do is I want to, you know, part of our evangelism thing is I want to put magnets on all these cards." It's like, okay, well, that costs money.
Yeah, and
so it's
so
like,
you know, we need financial resources. Then we need the people who have the kind of the creativity to make those things happen, and then the hands to go out and serve and to do those things. So yeah, what we need is lots of people willing to make a commitment, sacrifice based on that commitment, and then willing to fight for the things that they've sacrificed for.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for being here. Stay tuned for a 7-minute story. We'll see you. We'll catch you next time. Catch you
Whatever.
next time on the 167. We'll see you catch
Smooth
you.
ending.
See you later. Hey, welcome to 7-Minute Stories here on the 167. I am here with my friend Tom Hudson. Say hello to everybody.
Hey.
All right, Tom. Well, you're here to bring us your 7-minute story. I'm really super excited about it because I got to kind of see your journey as you've been going. So let's give it a shot. How about that?
Yeah. So my 7-minute story, I just really want to focus on what God is doing in me and my wife's life right now. My background's pretty crazy and complicated, but you know, through the journey, you discover that every face has a story, I think was said once, and my story is just one amongst the many. So I really just want to focus on what God's doing in my life right now. And it all started this summer. Me and my wife were both saved. We're both would call ourselves Christians at the time, but hadn't been to a church in years, and there was no active relationship with God whatsoever. But this summer, we came home. We had a friend, my best man, living with us for the last few years, and COVID had really done a number on him. And we hadn't heard from him for 24 hours, which is pretty rare. He lived in one of our spare bedrooms, and went in and checked on him, and unfortunately found that he had made the decision to take his own life. For the first time in my life, I was sent into physical shock. It was earth-shattering. He was a big part of our lives. An introvert, and you didn't see him all the time, but when you did, he was kind of the center of everything, and a very, very good friend. So that was earth-shattering. I was sent into shock. It was very difficult for us to process. A pastor came out that night. One of the responders called them, and we couldn't stay in the house anymore, though. It was hard to sleep. We traveled, spent time with family, came back, decided to expedite the home hunt, and had never been to Gardner. We stayed at a hotel with a U-Haul when we moved here in Gardner, we found out later, but had never been to Gardner. Found a house online. It had just been listed like that Saturday morning. So we went with our realtor, put in an offer with pretty much not an uncapped escalation clause, but we were done hunting. And they responded with, well, we're going to take offers for 24 hours. And within an hour, they called back, hour or two, and said, we're just going to accept your offer. And for much less than we thought it would be. But we truly believe that was divine intervention, because looking back, we were meant to be in Gardner. We were meant to be at New Life. This was supposed to be our journey. And that's how we truly feel. So right away, weeks before we moved in, we put together a list of churches here in Gardner. We were just in Olathe, so it wasn't that big of a trip. But we came down, went to New Life, fell in love week one. It was just, it felt like home. It was welcoming. We didn't stop by the booth because we were still kind of like in and out, like weird.
I know. Everybody wants to sneak in and sneak out their first time.
And we've done that a lot. So that leads me to that week. I filled out an online contact card, and I was just like, hey, we came for our first time, and kind of told a little bit of what had recently happened, because we had already made a commitment that we didn't want to sneak in and sneak out. And I even said that in that online card. We didn't want to come for a few weeks and then fade away once the pain lessened. And pretty quickly, you had reached out to us, and I think I might have sent you an email. I don't remember, but you had reached out to us, and I met with you a couple times. And one of the first big things we did was we made the commitment that we wanted to join a life group. We'd heard about it in the service once or twice. We heard you talk about it, and you said, give me a couple days, and we said Tuesday and Thursday. And you were like, okay, that's cool. I have this on Tuesday and this on Thursday, but you should really check out this life group on Wednesday.
I know. Isn't that terrible? I was like, give me your days. And you're like, Tuesday, Thursday. I was like, what about Wednesday?
And Wednesday was not a day that worked for us, but I could tell in the email you sent me that it might be a good idea, that we might be a good fit in this life group. And I'm extremely thankful we did. We joined Mike and Tracy Maddox's life group, the Snack House, and it's been so incredibly rewarding immediately just to truly care purely about other people and have those same people purely care about you and your journey and your walk and your life. It's just been truly life-changing. Like, as I meet people now, I'm like, if you're not in a life group, get in a life group. Like, it completely changed our lives and how we build relationships, and it was truly impactful right out the gate. And now, I talk to a couple people in our life group every day. I have an accountability partner from our life group, and it's just so impactful for us. Quickly after that, we joined the FIT team, the First Impressions team. We wanted to serve, but we were very uncomfortable. We were not like, yeah, we're going to serve New Life. Like, we were pretty uncomfortable. And First Impressions seemed like an easy way. You had said, hey, this will at least get us started, And we looked at it. We were going to open some doors, say hello, welcome some people in the church. And instantly, that's not what it was. Like, that's what it was, but it was interacting with church staff during that time. It was meeting and developing relationships with members. It was hearing OJ's jokes, quickly we built that sense of community even further with way more people in the church from the First Impressions team. And, we got to meet Meredith and some of the other members of the staff, and it was just a deeper level of commitment to New Life. And it's funny how that works. It wasn't just opening doors and saying hello. And
I tell everybody that they're like, we want to get more connected to the church. I'm like, join a life group, serve.
And both were just immediately impactful. But right after we joined a FIT group, my wife had gotten pregnant, And it's something we had started trying years ago, but prior to Zach's death, I was so busy. I just traveled all the time. You would think for work, and no, it was for recreational activities, and I just traveled all the time. So we never did. So we had joined the fit team. I was staying home more because we were still dealing with Zach's death, and she had gotten pregnant very quickly after she had a miscarriage. But by this time, we'd developed relationships in the church. And even more importantly, we had begun a rigorous dive into the Word. Like every day we were spending time in the Word. And at the beginning, I was so jealous of my wife because she'd go to bed and turn her lamp on, and 2 hours later, she'd turn it off. And I'm like, how do you do that? And it took me longer, but then like last night, I read half the letters Paul wrote, because I just want to know more. But at that time, we had already developed that as a part of our lives, and our relationship with Christ had become real for the first time. And it was painful. I reached out to you. I know you guys have a similar story. I know we met so many in the church and outside of the church that also have the same story. We found out we weren't alone, but very quickly, partially within hours, but definitely within days, my wife just looked at me and said, I trust God's plan for us. And I'm trying not to cry, but it was a moment where I valued the marriage that I have and the woman that is in my life so much, because she so quickly transitioned to, I trust God's plan for us. And, through Zach's death and through the miscarriage, God does things, and sometimes they're not great and sometimes they're painful, but the journey that we've been through with New Life, the life group, the fit team, the connections, the community, allowed us, paired with being in the Word and activating a real relationship with Christ, allowed us to just realize we're okay. People go through this. We are going to get through this, and we're going to trust God's plan for us. So that kind of led us up to Move, which has been even more life-changing than the prior 4 or 5 months. I entered Move in a weird spot. We had just joined the church at the end of Game Changer. We didn't quite know the whole thing, but I'd gone back and watched a lot of it.
There's this vague thing that's happening.
Yeah. So I'd already known about that. And now I'm like, Move, they're asking for more money. I was hesitant. I'm like, I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor. My grandparents were pastors. Long story, ran from God for years. But it drew me back, and I was like, hold up. But it's a testament to the infrastructure New Life's created, because I already had built so many relationships and had so many contacts that I felt comfortable going to and saying, hey, here, this is what I'm thinking. Like, I don't think what I'm thinking is right. So I want feedback. I want to know what are your thoughts on this? You went through Game Changer. You made serious commitments through Game Changer. How do you feel about this move? And my eyes began to open, and like I said, it's a testament of New Life's infrastructure, because the way we had been so involved so quickly and built so much community, paired with an active relationship with Christ, we were at a point where we were willing to search out feedback and not just be like, oh, maybe we need to go to a different church. They're already asking for money again. But no, we listened, and then had dinner at Pastor Rick's house after we became members, and he even asked, what have you guys thought about Move? And we were open and got more feedback from Rick. And my eyes began to open into the why behind Move. And that Move wasn't just, we need more money because wood costs more, steel costs more. There was so much more to it. And it was only a 5-week series, but the change that occurred within us was substantial, because I began to see why. And then I began to see what New Life's true values were, the unity, the focus on growth within us, not just we need more money for a bigger church. We began to see why we need a bigger church. And our eyes shifted, and it was growth for us, because we took the time to actually do some research and found, one of the greatest values that New Life has is that unity. And that unity for us was created and allowed to proceed through the community that we built within the church and our devotion to a daily journey. And so I came to the Friday early commitment service. Most of our life group was here, and I had already filled out the card. And I had a number on the card that was comfortable. It was a good amount, but it was comfortable. And I knew it was comfortable. And I'd already battled with the Holy Spirit, I think, that week, knowing that it was comfortable. So I came in with a little like, I don't think I'm doing exactly what God wants me to do. But as Rick talked about sacrificial giving, and as that moment, that evening of church unity just coming together, and the Holy Spirit was just like, that's not the number I want you to write. And I knew what the number was because I felt like it was already there, and it doesn't matter what it is, but we had increased our giving 50% from what comfortable was. And for us, that put us into what we felt was sacrificial. And it was an emotional experience. And I'll never forget the moment I walked up to the altar. And everybody was, putting them down, and you could tell it was meaningful, but I just walked up and I kind of slammed it on the altar. And I'm like, I'm committing this. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that is extremely uncomfortable, because the New Life community has given me so much so quickly, and has guided me and my wife to a point in our relationship with Christ that we couldn't have done on our own. And this is just one small thing I can do to say thank you, so that the system is in place for others that come in. And, and then I saw you, gave you a hug, we talked a little bit, but at that moment, I'd never felt a physical shift in my body. Like I truly believe I felt the Holy Spirit in that moment, and it was like, well done, now do it, because I can put the card down, but now we got to do it.
Well, it was such a great moment. I walked up to you and you were wearing kind of, I think, something similar to what you're wearing right now. It was like the waterproof vest. And I walked up, somebody had come and told me, I said, Tom's looking for you. I walked up and I could see there was wet spots on the vest. And I was like, I
didn't know that.
And I was like, oh, what's happening? And then I saw you and you were crying, and like, it would literally like roll down your face and hit the vest, and it like wouldn't dry because it was this waterproof vest.
No.
I was like, oh man, he's going through something. And you shared that with me, and I was so proud of you in that moment.
I had no idea, but yeah, it was so impactful. It was just like, I had to go through that journey, and it just pulled everything from Move together, because it isn't about what I wrote on the card. It's about the commitment I made to God to continue to serve him faithfully, because he does so much for us every day. This is just one thing I can do in return. And then we came to Sunday commitment as well, and I paired that with we commit to serve deeper. Because I have a lot of free time. My company kind of runs itself. So now I'm at a period where I want to figure out how to serve deeper, how to give God more of my time, and not just our resources. So Move started with, whoa, what's this, to just life-changing for us. And it's been this whole journey of the last 4 or 5 months at New Life has been incredible. It's been one, God's been preparing for me for a long time and been working on me for a long time. And unfortunately, it took the event it did, but we couldn't be more thankful and happy to be here. We've fallen in love with Gardner and the people in it, and New Life, of course. So we're extremely thankful.
Well, awesome. Like I said, I love your story. I think that's just the beginning of what God's going to do. I see you're one of these people that's like, man, just unlimited potential. This is just the beginning of your story. So thanks for coming and sharing it with us.
Absolutely.
See you guys next time here on the 167. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardner.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.